The story opens inside a small-town diner on a busy morning. Customers whisper and laugh at Rebecca, a young black waitress, as she serves tables. A group of teenagers mocks her skin, while even some adults avoid her touch when she places down their plates. Rebecca stays silent, swallowing the humiliation. Her eyes heavy with pain but her hands steady. The bell above the diner door jingled, letting in a burst of cold morning air and the sound of chatter from Main Street. Inside, the diner was alive with the clatter of plates, the hiss of coffee being poured, and the low murmur of conversations. On the surface, it looked like any other ordinary morning in a small American town. But for Rebecca, it was another day of swallowing words she could never say aloud. She moved from table to table with quiet precision, her uniform crisp, her hair pulled neatly back. Her smile was polite, practiced, the kind that masked exhaustion. Yet no matter how careful she was, eyes followed her, and whispers trailed in her wake. At the corner booth, a group of high school boys leaned close, their laughter sharp and cutting. "Hey, watch out," one of them muttered, loud enough for the others to hear. "Don't let her hands touch your food. You don't know where it's been." The others laughed, one covering his mouth with a fake cough. Rebecca's back stiffened, but she said nothing. She set down the plates, her hands steady even as her chest ached. At another table, an older woman shifted her cup closer to herself when Rebecca reached to refill her coffee. She offered no thank you, only a cold glance that said more than words ever could. Rebecca forced a soft, "You're welcome anyway," though it sounded hollow even to her. The diner smelled of bacon and butter, but to Rebecca, the air carried the heavier weight of judgment. Every laugh that wasn't for her felt like it was against her. Every avoided glance became another reminder that she was tolerated, not welcomed. Still, she kept moving, her shoes pressed against the tile floor, step after step, as if rhythm alone could keep her steady. She had learned to live inside the silence, to find strength in not responding. Her hands trembled once, briefly, when she set down a stack of pancakes, but she quickly tucked them behind her apron, where no one could see. Across the room, a man in a baseball cap watched her. He smirked, leaned toward his wife, and whispered something. The woman's eyes followed Rebecca with disdain, her lips curling into a sneer. Rebecca caught the glance, just for a moment, then looked away. Her chest tightened, but she inhaled slowly, the way her grandmother once taught her. Breathe deep. Don't let them see you're hurt. Dignity is the crown they cannot steal. So she moved quietly, gracefully, like a shadow no one wanted to touch but everyone noticed. And yet, behind her eyes, a storm gathered, because even silence had its breaking point. The kitchen was supposed to be noisy enough to drown everything out. The hiss of frying pans, the scrape of spatulas, the slam of plates on the counter. But for Rebecca, the laughter from the dining room had followed her in, clinging like smoke that refused to clear. She kept her head low, focusing on wiping down the counter. Her hands worked fast, but her ears caught every word. "Man," the line cook muttered, smirking as he leaned toward another worker. "I don't know how customers eat with her touching their food. I'd lose my appetite." The other worker chuckled. The words weren't loud, but loud enough. Rebecca's shoulders stiffened. She didn't look up, didn't answer. She had learned long ago that defending herself only made her more of a target. Still, her chest ached, her throat tightening as though the words had left a bruise she couldn't massage away. The manager, a heavy-set man with tired eyes, walked past, catching the exchange. For a split second, Rebecca thought he might say something. Instead, he sighed and muttered, "Just let it go, Rebecca. Don't take it personally. Don't take it personal." The phrase stung more than the insult itself. She nodded without a word, though her eyes burned. To them, racism was just another inconvenience, a storm she was expected to stand in without an umbrella. By the end of the shift, her smile had cracked. The mask she wore for customers felt heavier than her tray of dishes. When she finally stepped outside into the cool night air, she exhaled a breath she had been holding all day. The walk home was quiet, her sneakers pressing against the cracked pavement. Streetlights buzzed overhead, casting long shadows across the empty sidewalks. By the time she reached her small apartment, exhaustion had wrapped around her like a second skin. Inside, she stood before the bathroom mirror. The fluorescent light flickered, catching her reflection. The faint lines of weariness under her eyes, the tightness around her mouth. For a long time she stared at her own face. Why me? The thought whispered, though her lips never moved. Was this all she was meant for? To be looked down on, dismissed, laughed at? Behind her reflection, she imagined the faces of her grandmother and mother. Women who had faced the same looks, the same whispers. She remembered their words, quiet but steady. Carry yourself with dignity, Rebecca. They can strip you of many things, but not of who you are. She pressed her palms to the sink, leaned forward, and let the silence settle. Tears welled, but did not fall. When she finally turned away, it was with a quiet resolve, because no matter how heavy the burden, she still showed up. Every morning, every shift, and tomorrow would be no different. The evening shift at the diner was always quieter. The morning rush had faded, leaving behind a hum of conversation and the glow of neon lights bouncing off the windows. Rebecca moved from table to table, her body tired, but her composure steady. That was when he walked in. A tall man in a charcoal suit, polished shoes clicking against the linoleum floor. His presence immediately shifted the air. Not loud, not commanding, but unmistakably different. He carried himself with a quiet confidence, the kind that made people glance twice. He slid into a booth, table 7 near the window, and placed his hands neatly on the table. No phone, no menu, just waiting. Rebecca approached with her usual polite smile, the kind that hid more than it revealed. "Evening. Can I get you started with something to drink?" The man looked at her directly, his gaze steady but kind. "Coffee, black, and—" "Your name?" Rebecca hesitated, surprised. Customers rarely asked. Most barely looked at her long enough to notice. "It's Rebecca," she said softly. "Rebecca," he repeated, as though her name deserved space in the air. "Thank you," she nodded, retreating to fetch his coffee, but she could feel the stares. At another booth, 2 men whispered, their eyes darting toward table 7. The line cook peeked out from the kitchen window. Even the waitress on the next shift leaned against the counter, watching closely. Something about this man unsettled them. When Rebecca returned with his cup, the group at the corner booth snickered. One of them muttered loud enough for her to hear, "Bet he tips her in pity." Their laughter rippled across the room. Rebecca's chest tightened, but before she could turn away, the man spoke. "Ignore them." His voice was calm, deliberate. "They see only what they want to see, not what's real." For the first time that evening, Rebecca met his eyes. There was no pity there, only respect. The kind she hadn't felt in years. He asked her small questions. How long she had worked there. What she enjoyed outside of the diner. He listened, really listened, as though her words mattered. It was disarming, almost unreal. Whispers grew louder among the staff. The manager scribbled something nervously on his notepad. And then, the diner door creaked open. The owner, Mr. Dawson, stepped inside. A man who almost never came during the evening shifts. His eyes landed on table 7, and in an instant the color drained from his face. He froze, his lips parting as though he had seen a ghost. The stranger turned slightly, acknowledging him with a calm nod. "Good evening, Dawson." Rebecca glanced between them, confused. But the silence that followed carried weight, the kind of silence that said everything was about to change. The morning light spilled through the blinds of the diner, casting long stripes across the floor. The familiar rhythm began again. The scrape of chairs, the murmur of conversation, the hiss of the coffee machine. To anyone walking in, it was just another day. But for Rebecca, it was different. Her hands shook slightly as she tied her apron in the back room. The memory of the suited man from table 7 still lingered in her mind. His eyes, his words, and the way the owner's face had turned pale at the sight of him. Something was coming. She could feel it. By mid-morning, the diner was crowded. The usual customers sat in their usual places. The group of high school boys lounged in the corner, their mocking laughter already filling the air. The older woman guarded her coffee cup like always. The cook cracked another crude joke from the kitchen window. Nothing had changed, at least not yet. Then, the door opened. The man from table 7 stepped inside. This time he didn't sit. He stood tall in the center of the diner, his suit pressed, his expression calm but resolute. Conversations dimmed, forks paused midair. All eyes turned to him. "Good morning," he began, his voice steady, carrying across the room. "My name is Elijah Carter. As of yesterday, I am the new majority shareholder of this diner and its chain." The room froze. "Mr. Dawson." The owner shifted uncomfortably, sweat beading at his temple. Elijah continued, his gaze moving slowly across the crowd. "I came here unannounced last night. I wanted to see how this place ran, how people were treated. And what I saw—" His eyes landed briefly on Rebecca, then back to the crowd. "What I saw was a woman working with dignity in the face of cruelty. And that woman, Rebecca, is the kind of leader this place deserves." A hush swept through the room. The teenagers stared at their table, their bravado gone. The older woman blinked, her lips pressed tight. Even the cook retreated, his joke dying in his throat. Rebecca stood behind the counter, her heart pounding. She hadn't expected this. She hadn't asked for it. But now every eye turned toward her, not with mockery, but with stunned silence. Elijah stepped closer. Starting today, Rebecca will serve not as your waitress, but as this diner's manager. Anyone who cannot respect her will not have a place here. The weight of his words settled heavy in the air. Some bowed their heads, others shifted uncomfortably in their seats, and for the first time Rebecca lifted her chin. Not in defiance, but in quiet strength. Her silence, once used against her, had become her crown. And in that moment, the shame no longer belonged to her. It belonged to them.